Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, welcome. I am delighted to welcome my guest today, Chip Massey. Chip is a leadership consultant with an unusual specialty. He helps executives break through the fears that hold them back from being the best leaders, strategists, business developers, and team members they can be. Chip became an advisor on how to overcome fear based on his first two careers. For 22 years, he served as an FBI special agent and hostage negotiator, with particular expertise in complex investigations, high-stakes interrogation, and fugitive apprehension. Chip was the New York field office team leader of the hostage negotiation team and worked intensively in crisis situations, including kidnappings. He also collaborated with the CIA to bust international espionage rings. He retired from the Bureau in October of 2017. Prior to his career in the FBI, for 6 years, he was an ordained minister. In both his FBI and ministry work, Chip had to deal with people under extreme pressure. He saw how fear affected their ability to think clearly and make good decisions. His job was to get them to manage their fears so they could see options, weigh courses of action, make tough, rapid decisions, and take actions that helped both themselves and those around them. He has now taken this focus into the world of business. Today, Chip, who has lectured to the West Point Military Academy, Carnegie Council New Leaders Program, local police forces, and business groups around the country, teaches the in-depth techniques he has mastered on how to deal with your own fear, as well as others' fear, so that corporate leaders can operate from a place of confidence, flow, and connection. This sweet spot, in fact, is where richer opportunities are found, resulting in more profound decisions. Chip and his family live in New York, right outside of Manhattan. Welcome, Chip.
Hey, Tammy, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a joy to have you here. And I'm so excited about talking with you and exploring your background and all that you've done over the years to get you where you are today. So let's start with the beginning. So you started as a minister, or I bet you had a couple other jobs before that.
Yeah. Our family had a farm. I grew up on a working dairy farm.
Oh.
Grew up on. We actually commuted from the big city of Dover to the farm, which was about
Dover. Where?
Dover, Delaware. I'm surprised. Okay. It should be highlighted on everybody's map. It's such an important metropolis. So anyway, started there, and I had various jobs. Growing up, just like everybody else. As a paper delivery and worked at a video store. Everything.
That's so funny that you mentioned paper delivery and video store, because those are things that probably some of our listeners would say, you
what?
Deliver what? Video what?
So true. That's so true. Wow. Yeah.
You look great for 110 years old.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's this whole regime I'm on.
Anyway.
Right. So anyway, but it was in college that I got interested in the ministry. And I was either going to go to law school or I was, going to go to seminary. I don't know. I just thought there was an avenue of helping people that I was really drawn toward. And at some point, the ministry idea won out in my mind. Right, I did that for 6 years on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I had a 2-point charge, which was, 2 churches that you were responsible for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 6.5 years after that, I I made a career change.
Yeah. So it's a pretty, I think from the outside looking in, right? It looks like a pretty dramatic change. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of thinking went into that change, and then how did you do it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, I so enjoyed getting to know people at that level. And
Mm.
that's been something that, you give up. Obviously it's one of the most profound experiences you can have, because people so trust you with
Mm.
what they're dealing with and what's going on with their lives. And once you're seen in a community as somebody that they trust and they can go to for their problems and talk to, and have somebody that actually listens and cares, you will run into somebody every day like that is
Yeah.
going through a crisis.
Right.
And
Right.
it is a wonderful opportunity and great experience, and you learn so much.
Mhm.
Seminary prepares you. You have various counseling courses. You have dealing with people in crisis and so forth. But it's not until you deal with another person's life that is also tied to yours, because you care for these people, you love these people, and
Yeah.
they are going through heart wrenching life stuff
Yeah. Yeah.
that in some cases it just boggles the mind how anyone can live through circumstances that some of these people have endured.
Yeah. It's
And
amazing how resilient
mhm,
people are, right?
yes,
But the
yes,
leap, it feels like a leap, like you jumped over a
yeah,
huge crevasse to go from that kind of, one-on-one, very deep, very personal kinds of connections with people. And then what crossed your path that said, "Hey, I think I'll work for the FBI."
it was a series of things. I think my
Yeah.
undergrad in college was criminal justice.
Oh,
So I always
okay.
kind of had a bug for
Okay.
it. I
Yep.
thought it was fascinating and interesting and all that. And it was one of the movies that made an impact on me
Mm.
was Mississippi Burning. And
Aha. Yep.
you remember that?
Yes.
Many people don't remember that movie, but I love the fact that you had this government entity that was devoted to attacking evil. It seemed
Mhm.
like to me,
Right.
they're coming in and they're going to take down the Klan, and it's going to, as long as it takes, as long as it takes, they're there.
Yeah.
I thought that was powerful, and it really spoke to me at the time. I guess because of the social justice implications and all that.
Right.
So I just started, learning more about
Mm.
what the bureau did and so forth. I didn't know any FBI agents. I don't know what those people did in a
Yeah.
day to day thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I asked some people. I found one guy was a retired agent. I talked to him. I talked to a guy that was currently in the FBI, and everybody had great experiences to share, and they said it
Mm.
was one of the best things that they'd ever done. But people ask us, well, why did you make the change?
Yeah, that would be my question, is
Yeah,
why, what made you even want to start looking in another direction? And were there other directions you explored as well at that time?
I think for me, it was I wanted something else,
Mm.
and that's difficult when you are in a slot that is a calling, a vocation, as opposed to what you just call a job. It's
Exactly.
it's harder to explain that to people.
Mhm.
But I felt in my heart that I wanted something more. And when I say something more, if I broke it down, I just say I wanted a little bit of excitement that wasn't present in my current life. I
Well, that's
wanted something
interesting.
that was, just different like
Mhm.
that.
So it wasn't like, "Oh, I want more money," or "I
Yeah,
wanna reach, I wanna conquer the world," or it was just there was something almost granular within you that needed a shift.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. And I was in the library, I was doing the research on different things, trying to reading different books,
Yeah.
and this just kept coming up again and again as a possibility for me.
Oh, interesting. What kinds of books were you reading that
You
that
know, I
you
was
remember?
reading things like "What Color Is Your Parachute?"
Okay.
Anything to do with career searches, that kind of thing.
Okay. Just
A lot
curious.
of business books. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a ton. But I was just curious because sometimes people point to a particular book they read that really kind of, turned the light switch on or
Mhm.
something. Sometimes that's the case, or just a book that really helped them to guide them through the process of making a transition in a way that they wouldn't have completely on their own. So,
Yeah. And I think you mentioned transition and making the jump from ministry to the FBI
yeah.
was it was it was a mind shift
Oh, yeah.
in a lot of respects. And you know, I like everybody else, deal with self-limiting thoughts and
Mhm.
making this kind of change. There's no way, you're going to be able to do that. There's all kinds of obstacles there, and you have that self-doubt and you have
Yeah.
small thinking that enters in. And you know what really helped me?
What?
Um,
Tell me.
do tell. Was two people entered my life
Ah.
that were so significant, people I've never
Mhm.
met, but I learned about them through audio tape.
Oh,
And
interesting.
two people were Zig Ziglar and Les
Uh-huh.
Brown.
Uh-huh.
And these two people who I've never met and only knew through, and at that time it was through cassette tape,
Oh boy, are we
right?
we
Right?
we're growing a list here of there are going to be people listening to this who are going to have to go onto the internet of all things and look up what is he talking about. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. And those guys were like my coaches. I
Yeah.
listened to their tapes, I swear to you, until they most likely wore out.
Uh,
Because every day it was, for example, I had to commit to a certain training program to get myself physically ready just to enter in the academy
yeah.
and to be considered even. So you had a minimum of a physical standard. And so there
Did you
was
have to apply? You had to apply to the academy. It's not like anyone who pays tuition can go.
Exactly. You have to
First, you had to be
apply
accepted,
to
right?
the FBI,
Yeah.
and it's just like everything else now. It's online. So if you're interested in applying, you go to FBI.com or federal jobs.com, and
Yeah.
that's how everything begins through
Yes.
that
Yeah.
application
Yeah.
process. And that's how it started. I
Yeah.
just filled out an application and sent it in, and the process started to churn from there.
And Zig Ziglar and Les Brown, can you give us even just a little nugget of each of their out of their work that just sort of really kind of landed for you? What was it that really, is there a quote or something in particular about their approach that just really propelled you?
I think it was a belief in yourself.
Ah,
I think the overall dominant thing was belief in yourself and do not quit.
do not
Eh,
quit. Mm.
That is it, the perseverance of your goal, of what it is you want to accomplish. You just have to keep at it. And in order to do that, you've got to believe. You've got to believe that you're capable of
Yeah.
making that happen. And you
Yeah.
don't, it's a process. It was just like everything with the physical training. It took me a while to get to the point where I met the standards to
Yeah.
get in, but I had to continue to believe and get up at dark 100 in the morning to go for a run or to go to the gym and so forth before I got to my regular day job. So
Right.
all those things, but it was the motivation that of the goal of what I wanted to accomplish, and the belief of that
Yeah.
had to be dominant.
Did you have a vision of what you wanted to do with the FBI as you went through this process? Did you have any kind of a clear vision, or was it just, I want to be part of this organization that's fighting evil?
That's what it was for me. I thought
Just in a
I,
general sense.
I was looking forward toward the camaraderie of
Ah,
being a part of a team. In the ministry, it's just you.
yeah,
You're on your own,
yeah.
and
Everything rests on you.
yeah, and
Yeah,
you're also you're separated out from people. People don't know
right,
how to treat somebody in the clergy,
right.
except that they're over there, kind of thing.
Exactly. No, that's a very good point, right?
And you always felt, it makes you feel weird, it just does. um, so, but at any rate, Yes, so that's what it was for me. I made
Mm.
the thing for me was I wanted to be a part of this organization that did so much good. And
Mhm.
you read about it, especially when I was coming up. You read these great stories of all the things that they were doing and so forth, and that just continued. But yeah,
Yeah. So how long did it take from the time you decided to apply or actually applied, got yourself physically ready and put yourself through all those paces to the point where you actually were employed by
right.
the FBI?
Exactly. I think when I filled out the application to the time I started at the academy was probably around a year. It took
Okay.
for the all the paperwork to go through and going through the various tests and get the medical records and for them to do the background interviews. I mean, it is an extensive
Oh, yeah.
process, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know some people who've been in comparable roles, and yeah, they want to know how you were toilet trained as an infant. I mean, it's
Oh,
just
it's
like every detail of your life, who you've known, who you dated in high school, et cetera, et cetera. So then once you got into the academy, there's still no guarantee.
exactly. I mean, you can get eliminated at any point in time when you're in the academy. Obviously, the longer you're in the academy, the more they're invested in you. They've already
Yeah.
put a huge investment in you. That's the other side of that, is that for them to do all the work to get you to that point, all
Yeah.
the time and hours of research in your background, medical tests, and so when you're at they have a vested interest to have you make it through successfully.
Sure.
Now there are, many people within the first 3 days leave. Many. There's a certain percentage
And maybe a higher percentage than in other kinds of,
work exactly.
preparation academies or things like that. Yeah.
Yes, because there are certain realities of law enforcement that you don't really understand until you're in touch with it. And they make sure that in the first 2 to 3 days, you know exactly what you're getting into. So
Yeah.
there's some very, harsh things that are just part of, the reality of what you're entering into that you could encounter.
Yeah.
So some people decide at that point, I didn't think about that. I
Yeah.
didn't see it for what that was, and
Yeah.
so forth. And they're like, done, thank you.
Okay.
Other people you can get washed out for injuries or
Mm.
failing tests. It's you're always one thing about the academy is that you're always being evaluated. There isn't
Yeah.
a time I really felt like there was somebody following me with a clipboard like 24/7. You
What's
just
a
got that feeling.
clipboard? Just kidding. No, I get it. I get it. So how is there a typical length of time someone's in the academy, or does it depend on what specialties they're kind of training you for?
Yeah, no, there is a set period of time. Gosh, to it's grown since I went in.
Oh, yeah.
It was about 4 months, and now it's more than that. So
I would have
I'd have to
thought it would
check.
be more than 4 months, but
Hmm.
that's interesting. So it sounds like it must have been incredibly intensive and challenging.
Intensive, but fascinating and exciting.
Oh, good.
It just I wish anybody that really wanted to get an exposure to the academy could, because
Yeah.
there was just so many cool things that you learned. I mean, you learn how to drive an emergency vehicle. It's like,
Ah.
yeah, how do you do that under pressure and stress? And
Yeah. Yeah.
they call them go fast cars. And
Uh-huh.
and how do you make arrests, and how do you deal with interviews process and so
Yeah.
forth. So there's so many different and cool things that you get a chance to do.
Wow. So then 4 months in the academy, clearly you passed, and then what happened?
My first office is what you're given your assignment about 11 weeks into the academy, or 8 weeks into the academy. You're told where you're going to be going,
Okay.
which field office, and I was assigned to the Washington D.C. field office, and I spent my first time period there. I transferred from Washington D.C. to New York City in 2004.
Oh, okay.
But when I was in Washington D.C., I worked espionage cases, foreign counterintelligence program.
So more international kinds of cases than
It,
domestic?
exactly, those
Uh-huh.
involved a lot of travel, a lot of work with the CIA.
Uh-huh.
to find who the spies were and so forth. There's also a way, being a part of the foreign counterintelligence program, you were also engaged with detecting spies that were present in the country from a foreign hostile power. So
Wow.
all that, I spent the first part of my time period in Washington, D.C. doing that. And then I worked fugitive programs. I worked the victim witness program, and my last squad was as a public corruption agent. So
Oh, wow.
I worked, as any elected official that had an allegation perhaps of bribery or other malfeasance, we'd investigate that.
So when you hear that you worked for the Bureau for all these years, there's really an extensive range of work that you did and the kinds of things that you were focusing on. So did you have to be trained each time you kind of switched gears? Because it's almost like you switched jobs within the job.
Right. That's a very good point. And there is a learning curve to each violation.
Yeah.
The basics, the principles are still the same.
Okay.
For example, the bread and butter of any FBI investigation is cooperation of somebody involved in the criminal aspect of it.
Mm.
So when we go, say, let's say it's a spy case, for
Mm-hmm.
example, and so one of the things I would want to do if I'm targeting something is I want to find out who this person is in touch with. I'd want to find out what their motivations are in life. I do a lot of background investigation into that. And I would try to develop people that perhaps this subject was in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they were asking this person a little too many deep questions about their government work and what kind of information they had access to and that kind of thing. So it's learning how to talk to people, how to connect with them, especially in criminal cases. When I was working criminal violations, often the case, people don't want to talk about that.
Right.
They don't want to talk about fear of retribution, fear of being ostracized in the community, just plain fear. So it was my job when I was, engaging somebody who was perhaps on the inside of this criminal organization, but had more of a peripheral responsibility, a smaller role, was to find that person who knew what was going on and get them to trust me and get them to share information and talk about what was happening. It's all that process.
So were you in situations where you had to pretend to be someone else, or were you pretty much transparent? I'm with the Bureau and I'm here to ask you a few questions.
Right. No,
I know that sounds so simple. It's not that simple.
It's not. No, you're right. I mean, there's all kinds of dimensions to an investigation. Obviously, we have people that do undercover operations, extensive operations. No, my job was as a case agent was always in the main. I was, this is who I was. And
so even in your earlier years when you were working in DC on more international kinds of cases, would it be that some of these I can't believe we're talking about spies. It's, I know it was a regular part of your life, but most of us have never, as far as we know, dealt with spies. So, but I'm just curious about, not just, because I'm, wildly curious about the work, but also the different positions that you had to hold in a professional way, and also the way that you were able to interact with different people. So were these spies already identified by the time you were engaged in these cases, or sometimes you were part of the team that was actually trying to identify who was doing what and what they were up to?
The latter, yes.
Okay.
So it was, especially in foreign counterintelligence, you don't know who is designated from a foreign hostile power to be a spy. So there's a range of positions within the framework of a foreign government entity, and it's your job to figure out who's who, what's what.
Yeah,
and that is the FBI spends a lot of resources to ensure that we're able to track these people, find them, and figure out what's going on. Now, obviously, terrorism is a whole nother category.
Yeah.
That where most of the resources now goes,
Yeah.
of course, and it should
Yeah.
to terrorism. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So now another part of your work with the Bureau involved negotiations, hostage negotiations. So that was, I remember you sharing a little bit with me about that in terms of how you even were able or enabled to do that work, because that was sort of almost above and beyond your regular role, right?
right, exactly. In the FBI, you can have what they call collateral duty
Mm.
assignments. So your regular, day job, I say, is, you're a special agent. That's your job. You're to go after bad guys, arrest bad guys, put them in prison.
Yeah.
The other side is that you can also engage other things that the Bureau does. Like, for instance, we have an evidence response team that whenever there's a big, for example, the Boston bombing,
Yeah.
we sent, every resource that the Bureau had was there, and
Mm.
to recover evidence,
Yeah.
to in the smallest of detail,
Yeah.
and to engage and conduct mass interviews. At any rate, there's that. There's also a scuba team. You can, if you like scuba diving and you have an interest in that, you can apply to be on the scuba team to recover evidence, to recover different things, obviously.
So, but you have to get reassigned temporarily for those
So
kinds of roles,
so
or
you apply to those positions with the understanding that you have to be available should the need arise. So it doesn't matter day or night, weekend, holiday, whatever. If there's something happening, you're called out. You're
Mhm.
gone. So
Mhm.
that could be SWAT, it could be evidence recovery, it could be scuba. And for me, it was hostage negotiations.
And that was something that you stepped into. I mean, they had to approve, but you wanted to get involved in that. Is that correct?
Exactly. All these positions are volunteer. You don't.
Right.
You have to apply, and there's an interview process, and then there's a time you serve on the auxiliary teams for all
Mm.
these collateral duties, and that's what it was for me. I got interviewed. I first applied, and I was interviewed by a team of agents to see if I was a suitable candidate,
Yeah.
and then they make a determination if if they're what you're looking for.
Mhm.
There's and then you're on the auxiliary team, so
Yeah.
you're helping out.
Right.
You're never going to be on the phone with a person in crisis or a hostage taker or the kidnapper until you are certified. And so first there's a 40-hour course to be on the auxiliary team,
Mhm.
and that's our basic course on hostage negotiation. And then if you're selected to go for the 2-week course, that's the Quantico additional course that you go
And you
through.
did that, right?
Yes, yeah. So I was certified hostage negotiator and team leader for the New York field office. But that experience, rather, I'm jumping ahead, but that
Yeah.
experience, that training
Yeah.
was phenomenal,
Oh,
Tammy.
yeah. Yeah.
Again, one of the other things I wish people could take just like a little seminar in it, because it teaches so many other life skills
Mhm.
that are so helpful. People that go through this process, they often said, I wish I had this when I was, going through a difficult time in my relationships. This would have really helped me.
Yeah.
Or, it's so many things.
So I want to get to that because I know that will lead us into talking about what you're doing today. But before we get there, I'm just curious, what within you made you want to go after that type of role versus some of the other options that you could have gone after? What was it about that just compelled you?
I think it was the ministry background for me.
Mm.
I think it was a natural kind of affinity for, here is somebody that you're going to be dealing with in a crisis situation, and you want to help, because the other side of that equation is not just this person that's in crisis, but the person that they've kidnapped and perhaps have a gun to their head.
Right.
So I saw my skill set that I already had, and an interest, a desire to connect, and knowing that I could, because I've had the experience,
Right.
and resolve things. That was appealing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I see the connection there. So then you retired about
Yes.
what, a year and a half, 2 years ago
Yep.
from the Bureau. And you've now started your own business. So tell us some about that. I want to, of course we're curious. I'm sure we are all curious about sort of the linkages between your background in the ministry, your various roles within the FBI, and then what you're doing now. I'm curious to hear about how that all fits together and what you're excited about these days.
Right. So I started the business as a result of thinking that the skill set had a real application to what was going on out there in the
Mhm.
business community. And it just made sense when I talked to more people about their needs,
Mhm.
problems that they were encountering, that the most important aspect a lot of the times isn't the fact of we're talking about competency. For example, an accountant is going to be an accountant, and they know the training, they know what they have to do, they know the books, and you can get a number of people to do that.
Yeah.
To bring it up a level, if you want to connect that accountant with a client and further their trust in your company as somebody that is going to go the extra, is can connect to them and their other needs that they might have, and develop other portions of their business that they didn't realize that they could leverage to increase their business model. Well, all that is a part of making the connection to the other person. It's
Mhm.
using empathy, it's using active listening, it's using the building of relationships as a means of strengthening that relationship. And it's
Mhm.
all about the conversation.
Yeah. Why is that important though?
The conversation.
All of that, the building the relationships. I mean, don't get me wrong, it sounds like a silly question, but why leave this job, for example, where you're fighting evil,
Uh,
and now you're nothing wrong with what you're doing now, but I know that there's some connection between that work and probably being in New York and having investigated cases of impropriety that involve the business community to some degree, right? So you had a
right.
view into that even from being in the Bureau. So what compelled you to go in that direction and help people further develop their skills and their capacities in these areas?
And Tammy, for me, it's been this topic of fear.
Ah,
And I have seen people in a crisis situation as an FBI agent that were just so paralyzed and overcome and distraught with fear,
yeah.
just riddling their lives and everything that they touched, because they were a principal in the crime, or they were somehow connected to it,
Mm.
and they didn't, you know, they didn't know how to handle the life choices that were coming at them.
Ah, okay.
And it was my job, most of my work and the skill set that I got as a hostage negotiator involved connecting to people in that way and
Mm.
helping them manage their fears.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's for example, I'm sitting across from somebody, and let's say it's after they've been notified you're a subject of an investigation, they get an attorney, and you're sitting across from them at a table, and you have to make a connection to that person. Well, what you really have to do is understand the fears that they're going through. And
Mm.
if you can put yourself in the place of somebody that is facing the possibility of spending time in prison
Mm.
because of something they've done, well, that's a fear to work through. And
Yeah.
most people's inclination is, if they're caught in something like that, is to lie,
Yeah.
and is to find some kind of mitigation connection that they can just I don't know anything about that, I don't
Right.
recall, I don't remember, I was in the bathroom when they talked about this. You would
Right.
be amazed how many people were in the bathroom when a crime was committed. It's my job to cut through that,
Right.
and I did that by connecting with, using empathy and active listening,
Right.
because you have to find out what these fears are. You have to talk about them.
So what you're also doing is, and I think this is something that is really useful both for leaders, managers, executives, well, anyone in the workplace really, is the idea that if you just look at the behavior or the circumstances of what occurred and you don't take a look at the fear or the underlying forces that are actually driving that behavior, you can't help someone change the behavior.
That is
Right?
so true. For example, if there is something in your life that you're fearing, well, you're going to avoid it. If you're not addressing it, you're avoiding it.
Yeah.
So, and if there's a goal in your life that you want to accomplish, you want to get to, and you know that the primary A to B direct relationship direction is through that fear.
Mm,
Well, it's got to be such a strong desire in you to push through that fear rather than avoid it. It's like
right.
Seth Godin says in that lizard brain analogy,
Yes.
is that our survival mechanism is to stay away from things that make us uncomfortable and that make
Absolutely.
us fearful.
Right.
It's human nature.
Yes.
That's every day.
Right.
So we have to make a conscious decision to go through that fear to get to the other side. And the example I use is the fear that we had when we first learned how to ride a bike.
Uh-huh.
And because most people can connect to this, and it's such a powerful implication because it represented the first time when we were really engaging a physical aspect of our own safety was in jeopardy, right?
Yep.
Getting on that bike and possibility of falling and injury. And understanding that that bike also meant a new way of living a life. But you don't understand all the value that exists once you learn that skill.
Right.
You're like, for example, I mean, you and I both remember, right? The first time we got on a bike and we moved those pedals and it worked.
Yeah. Oh, I remember it very well. Yeah.
See? And most people do. Most people remember that when they broke through that fear and the exhilaration and excitement and the smile and, just the freedom and, own personal agency that you have.
Yeah.
And this new world that you discover as a result of being a bike rider, right? You're in a cool club because all the cool kids are riding bikes, the older kids.
That's right.
And now you can visit your friends at, breakneck speed and you can do all these cool things, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about going through our fears is when we're afraid, when we're operating out of a position of fear, we are not our best selves.
So I'm thinking about the role that you had with the Bureau and then the role that you're in now and the difference. It's almost like you evolved from, yes, you had to learn to uncover and move through the fear in order to get somebody to trust you and perhaps confess some wrongdoing or point you in the direction of some important evidence. What you're doing now is you're using the same skills. The difference is, I think, is that you're in more of a role of an advisor and teacher.
Yes.
And partner with your clients, I would say, to help them to see that dynamic themselves so that they can then feel empowered to work through it. Whereas in the Bureau, it wasn't about you helping someone with their own personal or professional growth at that point.
Right.
So I'm just curious if that sort of evolution of your role and where you would take somebody was part of your motivation or interest in making the transition from the Bureau to the role you're in now, or whether there were other things that played a role in that. Because and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm making the assumption that if you wanted to stay with the Bureau longer, you possibly could have.
Yes.
So what was behind making this new change and going from being fully employed in a very, what I would call probably one of the most secure positions one could hold, right? In a world where so many employment situations are no longer very secure,
right,
to becoming self-employed, which is definitely, there's a lot to that, right? In terms of the risk that you take becoming self-employed. So tell us about that transition. What made you decide to do it, and what are the steps you took to make that? Because a lot of people, I think, are run by fear. And as you said, it's very human. But I think that people are so run by their fears that they don't make the changes that would be helpful to them to be happier in their work or their professional lives. And that's what this podcast is all about, is helping people to see their way through that fear. So it's perfectly appropriate that you and I are talking today. So anyway, I know I asked about 3 questions in one, but I'll be quiet now.
Well, please don't be. But no, exactly. And an example I use is this. One of my cases in the bureau in New York, I had a fugitive case where our team went to make an arrest and the guy wasn't home. This is bad. This is a very bad thing.
Because I'm sure it was very well planned out, right?
Well, in most cases, yes. This came from a lead from another field office, and we had the best information that we could at the time, but he wasn't there. So very bad, because that's alerting. If you've got, and this guy, violent fugitive, you want to get a hold of this guy, you want to do so immediately, and you can't. So it's alerting because now people are aware that the FBI is there. Someone's making contact, no doubt. The clock is ticking in a big way.
Yeah.
So this is a tremendous stress-filled situation, and we had one lead. We had a phone number for the guy. So all this was happening. Decisions were being made about where to reposition some of our assets and people. And they said, well, let's get a clearance to make the phone call. We're going to make a call. We're going to try to call the guy. And we never want to just call somebody, by the way, because they can either ignore it and they can just throw and gone.
Right. They could throw the phone away.
It's a huge risk, but this is what we had. So they got the number. They want to make a call. Well, who are they going to give the phone to? They're going to give it to the negotiator. That's me, right? Who are they going? So I'm now on the hook for talking to the guy, and so I'm figuring out in my mind. All right, I'm going to deal with this just like I would with a hostage, a person in crisis, and I'm going to. So I dial the phone, and I'm thinking what I'm going to say. And what do you think how I started that conversation, Tammy? What do you think I said to the guy?
Hello?
Yeah, I did. Well, that's not bad. So the phone rings, and it seemed like it took about half an hour for him to pick up. But the phone rings and rings and rings, and finally I hear a connection, but nobody's talking.
Oh.
So the first words out of my mouth are, "My name is Chip. I'm here to help."
Oh, wow.
And then I wait. And then he hasn't hung up, but the words right, like maybe 3 or 4 seconds after that is, "I want to ask you, how bad does your life suck right now?"
Wow.
Now here's why I asked that, because I knew a little bit about a situation and what it is to be a fugitive. When you're a fugitive, your life does suck, because especially a low level fugitive where you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of resources.
Right.
So you have to find a place that you're going to lay your head every night. Well, you got to go to friends to do that.
Right.
How many friends you got that are going to harbor a fugitive?
Right.
And how many friends are you that know that you might have a warrant out on you and that somebody might be interested in that, somebody might want to pay for that information? So it's a level of trust in a world where trust doesn't exist.
Right.
And where are you going to get money if you don't have a job to go to, and you don't have a lot of resources, and you can't use an ATM because they know we got that?
Right.
You're not going to you can't call home. You can't talk to mom. You can't talk to your girlfriend. You've got a lot of things that you can no longer do.
Right.
It sucks.
The walls are closing in.
That's it. And so I start with that. And, when you can connect to somebody with a real thing they're going through, you're going to grab their attention. And so I use this as an example because I immediately made that connection to where that person was.
Wow.
That is dealing with a real fear in their life. And how are they going to do it?
Right.
And I gave him the alternative. If you don't deal with me today, and I understand your impulse is just to jet this phone and run.
Yeah.
But if you don't deal with me today, you're going to be looking over your shoulder the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a Marshall team that's going to be hunting you down that doesn't have an interest in you like I do. And I
Ah,
want you to come in and I want you to surrender to me. And I'm going to take you through the whole court process, and I'm going to stay with you every step of the way. So yes, you've got some things you've got to face. You know that
yeah,
running isn't helping you.
right,
It's a clock that's ticking.
right.
So when I deal with people now and I see that so obviously in executives' lives and people that are business owners that
Yeah,
are trying to make they know that there's something blocking them, but they haven't identified what it is. They
yeah,
know that they're at a plateau maybe, or they're scared about ascending to that next level
right.
because of fear that's operating in their lives. And when fear is operative, we make ourselves smaller. We tend
Yeah,
we hear the lizard brain talking to us. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You don't
right.
deserve that. It's going to do everything it can to destroy our efforts and
Yeah,
make us stay in our place, even
right,
though we're miserable.
right,
Even though we might hate our boss and we
right,
don't want to make a job change because, well, I this is the devil I know, and
exactly.
the paycheck is still coming in,
Right,
but even though it's killing me,
right.
I'm still going to do that. Well,
Yeah,
my job is to help people figure out what the fears that are holding them back, to
mm,
study those fears intensely. Let's look
mm,
at them. Let's take them apart. Let's
mm,
unpack these things and
yeah,
let's find out where these hold points are for us.
right.
And then take that knowledge and build up a plan.
Mm,
You can't just go into the boss and say, you suck. You got to change how you deal with me.
right.
That doesn't really work.
No.
That's a reaction, not a
Hmm.
plan.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
want people to have a real detailed plan on how they're going to get through to the other side of that fear.
And the way that you help them construct that plan, they can take full ownership of that because you're not just coming in and telling them what the plan should
Exactly.
be. You're helping them to construct a plan that's solely based on exactly their own fears and whatever's underlying their frustration, stuckness, stress. So,
Exactly.
so you've painted a really clear picture here of, of sort of what you're all about right now in terms of the work that you're doing. I know that you, in addition to, so that sounds like a wonderful scenario that might play itself out in terms of a one-on-one kind of coaching relationship, executive coaching. Do you work with groups? I know you do some speaking. Can you tell us a little more about where you take this approach and
Yes.
who
Yes.
who else are you enlightening?
Well, any group that really has an interest in learning this skill set, because what
Yeah,
I use the concept of hostage negotiations as a template for how to improve, your work life,
yeah, that's
how to improve your
amazing.
relationships, because it's the very things of just active listening and using empathy. People,
Yeah,
we many times, and you know this, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but people don't take the time to really listen to what's going on in someone's life. And you think, I've heard it time and time again, well, this guy, I try to talk to him, but he always talks over me. He never really listens.
yeah,
And it's so prevalent.
it is.
And
Yeah,
when you take the time to talk to someone and listen to them
yeah,
and
yeah.
seek to understand,
Yes, yes.
and identify and use empathy and connection like that,
Yeah, yeah,
you would be amazed. And I'm sure, and I know this is true for you, Tammy, you've come
yeah.
across this, is that the relief that people feel for being heard, just the fact that you took time, right?
That's actually, if I had to make a very, very short list of some of the key things that leaders and managers ought to be focused on, listening would be either at the top or the very close to the top of that list, purely because when people feel heard, they're more likely to listen. And gee, then there's actual communication happening and people can work together and understand one another. It's not about even having agreements, right?
Yes.
Just about understanding and then taking that understanding and moving forward from there, right?
Yes.
So we could go on and on with all of this, Chip. It's so vitally important, not just to our work lives and our professional lives, but also I think to our personal relationships too. It's not just exclusive. But I want to get to I want to just tie that into the whole idea is how often do we not just listen to ourselves when we're unhappy, where we continue to interact with the devil we know. Better to deal with the devil you know than the devil you don't know, right? Stay unhappy in the job because it pays the mortgage, it pays for the kids' college, all those things. No one's telling somebody to put themselves in financial danger. We're not suggesting that. But there are some very planful, pragmatic, thoughtful ways that people can think about making a change, becoming a happier person, a happier professional. And there are people like you and me out there trying to help them to do that. So what else is on your plate these days?
Yeah, I just am fascinated and interested in it. It gives me such joy and pleasure to help out people that are stuck and they don't know what is the sticking factor for them.
Yeah.
And that's what I know. That's the same thing you do is you help people uncover that. It's, we wish we could reach more people. And that's what I really like, speaking to larger groups because you get more of a chance of, connecting, and then they can connect to you and they find out about what you do and how it can help them.
Exactly. And it's also, even just by giving a public talk or speaking at a conference, you get to drop that, that pebble in the pond and then see where the ripples go out. Right? And see how even a few key principles or ideas can take somebody somewhere they never would allow themselves to go before because the fear was holding them back so much. Right?
Yes. Very true. Very true.
This is wonderful. This is fascinating. For our listeners who want to learn more about you and what you're up to, what's the best way for them to get a handle on what you're up to?
Sure. So I have a website, chipmassey.com. The name of the company is Plowshare Communications, but if you type in chipmassey.com, you'll get there, and you can see the different ways that we can connect and what I can do in terms of presentations or one-on-one. So
excellent, wonderful, and we will have all that information in the show notes so that people will be able to find you. And thank you, Chip. Thank you so much for your service to our country, to our society, and for all that you're doing now. This stuff has to spread like wildfire, no pun intended. We really got to make sure that more and more people are being true to themselves first, because that's going to make the world a better place.
Well, thank you, Tammy, for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed our time.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Chip Massey. It was such a pleasure to speak with him and learn about his professional journey and the impact he has made throughout his various career adventures. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Chip, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? That's awesome. I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find our page at tammygoularloeb.com/Apple. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be a guest on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.